Have you ever considered that something as ordinary as the salt sitting in your kitchen might carry secrets that touch both your body and your soul? In 1936, an exhausted mother, clinging to her last shred of hope, visited Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet. Her child was critically ill, his frail body failing, and every doctor she consulted had already declared his case hopeless. Yet Cayce, in one of his mysterious trance sessions, gave her a strange prescription: add a particular kind of salt to her son's bathwater. 3 days later, the boy was not only alive, he was running around their home in Virginia, laughing, walking, speaking, as if the illness had never touched him. This story alone is breathtaking, but the revelation behind it is far more astonishing. Cayce explained that salt was not just a cleansing mineral, not just something to season food or preserve meat. He described it as a sacred substance woven into the very design of human life. According to his reading, salt carries a direct resonance with the soul itself, acting almost like a spiritual key to unlock the divine blueprint hidden within your cells. Imagine that the very same crystals you sprinkle on your food holding memory, energy, and a connection to the Creator. Now, before you dismiss this as superstition, let me tell you what's coming next. For the next few minutes, I'll show you why ancient biblical texts refer to salt more than 30 times, and why these mentions are not just poetic metaphors, but encrypted codes for spiritual practice. I'll reveal how Cayce taught that the body itself uses salt as a bridge for psychic communication, and I'll share real-life cases from his archives where simple salt rituals awaken hidden spiritual gifts. If you've ever felt disconnected from your purpose, what you're about to hear may very well reconnect you. And if you want to go deeper into mysteries that could transform your own spiritual journey, subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because what you're about to learn has been concealed for centuries. The story really begins in 1934, 2 years before that miraculous healing, when Cayce entered one of his most profound altered states. His stenographer, Gladys Davis, sat ready to record his words, never imagining that what would come through him that day would shake even his closest followers. In his trance voice, Cayce began describing salt not as science defined it, a chemical compound of sodium and chloride, but as what he called crystallized intention. He said salt was a physical echo of God's original creative thought, a mineral that holds the vibration of divine order itself. And he went further. He spoke of every grain of salt as containing what he named atomic prayers, tiny energetic patterns humming with the same frequency as human consciousness. When salt dissolves in water, particularly when blessed or prayed over, Cayce taught that it opens a channel between the visible and invisible realms, a channel you can both feel and measure. This wasn't an abstract sermon. It was practical. A woman suffering from a supposedly incurable blood disease was instructed by Cayce to drink water infused with sea salt while repeating affirmations he provided. Within 6 weeks, her doctors were speechless. Her blood work had returned to normal, and they could find no medical reason for her recovery. But here is where Cayce's teaching takes an even more radical turn. He explained why salt appears so frequently in the Bible, and his words challenge centuries of religious interpretation. When Jesus called his followers the salt of the earth, Cayce said this wasn't a poetic compliment. It was a deliberate revelation of a spiritual technology. According to the source speaking through Cayce, salt served as a stabilizing anchor for the soul. It allowed advanced spirits to keep their higher consciousness intact while living in human form. In other words, salt wasn't symbolic, it was functional. He described its crystalline structure as mirroring the sacred geometry found in the Akashic records, the spiritual archive of all souls and their experiences. By mindfully consuming salt, you weren't just seasoning food, you were absorbing crystallized fragments of divine wisdom that helped the soul recall its purpose, its lessons, and its mission in this lifetime. This teaching changed how his community thought about prayer and consciousness. Case studies from the Association for Research and Enlightenment Archives Document individuals using salt rituals to recover memories of past lives, to sharpen intuitive perception, and even to accelerate their personal spiritual development. One Kentucky man followed Cayce's instructions for salt meditation. Within 3 months, he vividly recalled 17 different incarnations, complete with names, locations, and lessons learned. This knowledge completely reframed his current challenges and relationships, giving him clarity he had never experienced before. Now, before I share with you the reading that frightened even Cayce's assistants, let us take a closer look at what he called the salt wisdom centers in the human body. He explained that our physical form contains special points where salt gathers, functioning as antennas for divine communication. Think of your tears. Why is it that moments of deep prayer, worship, or emotional breakthrough so often come with tears? Cayce said it's because tears carry the highest concentration of spiritually active salt. They are liquid gateways, conducting divine energy and opening the heart to revelation. Even your brain, he explained, floats in cerebrospinal fluid calibrated with precise salt ratios. These delicate balances are essential for what Cayce called soul-brain communication, the harmony between spirit and body. When these salt levels are thrown off, whether by diet, stress, or spiritual disconnection, people experience what he named soul static, that heavy, numbing sense of being lost, unmotivated, or cut off from purpose. According to Cayce, this imbalance is at the root of the spiritual emptiness so many feel today. Now let me share with you the case that stunned even Edgar Cayce's closest team. In 1938, a woman brought her husband to Virginia Beach after a devastating car accident had left him in what doctors described as a vegetative state for 8 long months. His body was alive, but his mind seemed completely absent. The family, who had traveled all the way from Oklahoma, had spent everything they had on medical treatments that yielded no results. Out of sheer desperation, they turned to Cayce as their last hope. During the session, Cayce prescribed something that seemed almost unbelievable. He told them to prepare baths using sea salt from a particular region, to bless the water with certain prayers, and to administer these treatments at exact times aligned with the phases of the moon. He explained that the man's soul had drifted away from his physical body, as though unanchored, and that the salt would act as a spiritual magnet to draw his consciousness back into union with his form. Skeptical but desperate, the family obeyed every detail of Cayce's instructions. On the 7th day, the impossible happened. The man opened his eyes and spoke for the first time in 8 months. Within 3 weeks, he was walking, and soon after, his mind was almost fully restored. Doctors had no scientific explanation for what they were witnessing. But Cayce revealed something deeper. This was not merely a story of physical healing. It was evidence that salt can act as a bridge between dimensions of consciousness, restoring not just the body, but the very link between the soul and the flesh. This changes how we understand healing today. Cayce's teachings suggest that when we experience depression, anxiety, or a spiritual emptiness, it may not just be chemical imbalances or personal struggles. It may be what he described as a soul disconnection, and salt, when used with spiritual awareness, can help reestablish that sacred bond. Cayce explained that while the body naturally produces salt through its processes, there is a distinction between ordinary salt and what he called spiritually charged salt. When salt is produced or consecrated during prayer, meditation, or intentional devotion, it vibrates differently. This is why tears shed in joy have a profoundly healing effect compared to tears of despair, and why the salt in your body responds uniquely to the state of your spirit. In his 1940s readings, Cayce went further, stating something science is only now beginning to confirm, that salt crystals have memory. Just as modern technology uses crystals to store vast amounts of digital information, salt too can hold vibrational patterns. When you bless salt or speak words of life and truth over it, you are literally programming those crystals with intention. storing energy and prayer within them for your body and soul to draw upon. What makes this even more remarkable is how history supports these insights. Archaeological discoveries show salt being revered in countless cultures. The Dead Sea Scrolls reference sacred salt rituals. Himalayan salt formations, formed millions of years ago, contain mineral combinations scientists still struggle to explain. Native American traditions include salt ceremonies eerily similar to the practices Cayce described in trance. The pattern is undeniable. Across time and culture, salt has always carried more than material value. It has been a spiritual substance. One of the most powerful examples came during World War II. A young woman, deeply traumatized after witnessing violence, was suffering symptoms we would now identify as severe PTSD. She could not sleep, was haunted by nightmares, and had reached the point where her family considered sending her to an institution. In her desperation, she came to Cayce. His prescription was simple but radical. Blessed salt dissolved in water for both drinking and bathing, combined with daily prayer. Within 6 weeks, she was transformed. Her anxiety lessened, her nightmares ceased, and she described feeling cleansed in both body and soul, as if a heavy shadow had been lifted from her life. Cayce explained that experiences of trauma and pain leave behind what he called soul debris, energetic residue that clouds clarity, blocks joy, and interferes with divine connection. Salt, when used prayerfully, dissolves that residue. It clears the spiritual channels and restores your soul's natural radiance. And here's where this becomes practical for you. Cayce taught that anyone can use simple techniques to charge salt with spiritual intention. He instructed people to hold salt in their hands while praying or meditating, focusing deeply on divine light and allowing their energy to infuse the crystals. This salt could then be used in meals, added to baths, or even carried as a small pouch for spiritual protection and clarity. He believed this practice could transform the most ordinary salt into a vessel of blessing, a reminder that even the simplest elements of life can become sacred when offered to God with the right intention. Feel gratitude for this sacred element of the earth and invite it to work for your highest good, guiding your spiritual growth. One businessman from New York took this teaching to heart after learning of Cayce's work indirectly. Each morning he would bless a small amount of salt during his meditation and then add it to his meals, even his morning coffee. Within 3 months, he reported extraordinary changes. His decision-making in business became sharper. His prayers felt deeper, and he described living with a constant sense of divine guidance, as though heaven itself was whispering directions into his daily life. But Cayce revealed an even more astonishing practice for unlocking past life memories and accessing the very purpose of your soul. He called it salt scrying. Unlike ordinary prayer or meditation, this method required dissolving blessed salt in spring water while asking precise questions about your life, mission, or seeking divine guidance for important decisions. As the salt dissolved, practitioners were to enter a meditative state, watching the shifting patterns and impressions, allowing images and insights to rise from the depths of consciousness. Cayce explained that this was not imagination, but a vibrational bridge opening into the Akashic records, the eternal library of every soul's journey. Through this gateway, seekers could uncover lessons from past incarnations, receive guidance about the present, and align themselves with their higher calling. A teacher from California kept detailed journals while practicing this technique for 6 months. She reported visions that guided her through major life choices, from relationships to career paths. She described it as the moment she began living her authentic soul mission for the first time. Her predictions and insights, recorded faithfully in her journals, were later confirmed by events, leaving her with unshakable faith that she had tapped into divine wisdom itself. This insight reframes salt's role in the Bible in ways most have never imagined. Cayce taught that when Jesus called his followers the salt of the earth, he was not speaking in mere metaphor. He was revealing that salt was a spiritual technology, something disciples were meant to actively use. Even the story of Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt, Cayce argued, was not a punishment but a transformation. Her consciousness had become fixed in lower vibrations, crystallizing into a form that preserved her attachment but could no longer evolve. The pillar of salt symbolizes the great choice faced by every soul, to remain bound to what drags us down or to become purified agents of divine will. This shifts the way we read the Bible. These salt passages are not simply stories or moral lessons. They are instructions for spiritual awakening, blueprints for how souls can evolve and align with God's higher purposes. And here's why this matters to you. Your relationship with salt reflects your relationship with purification and divine alignment. When you consume salt mindfully, offering blessing and recognizing its sacred design, you are taking part in a practice as old as civilization, one that links you to cosmic consciousness itself and accelerates your spiritual transformation. Cayce explained that different salts carry different properties. Sea salt resonates with emotional healing and psychic development. Himalayan salt connects you to the grounding wisdom of the earth and strengthens physical vitality. Rock salt, formed from ancient deposits, carries what he called time wisdom, a resonance with earlier ages when humanity lived in deeper connection with divine realities. Even in modern healthcare settings, this knowledge finds application. A nurse in Virginia Beach began incorporating Cayce salt practices into her own meditations and her patient care. She reported that patients improved more when salt used in their treatments had first been blessed, and she herself noticed a remarkable increase in her spiritual sensitivity and intuitive guidance after a year and a half of faithful practice. Yet the most stunning revelation was recorded in 1944. Cayce explained that your very ability to receive divine inspiration and maintain soul consciousness while in the body depends directly on your salt balance. When your cells are nourished with spiritually attuned salt, your body becomes more receptive to what Cayce called divine downloads, streams of wisdom, healing, and purpose flowing straight from higher realms into your awareness. This is why he frequently recommended salt protocols for those seeking to awaken their spiritual gifts or to go deeper in prayer. Salt quite literally tunes your physical body to act as a receiver and transmitter of spiritual frequencies. Modern scientific research into neural conductivity and electrolyte balance confirms much of what Cayce revealed nearly a century ago. Your nervous system relies on precise salt levels to carry electrical signals, and your brain's ability to process thought, memory, and intuition is directly tied to mineral balance within your cells. This merging of scientific discovery with ancient spiritual insight is astonishing. A meditation teacher in Colorado began experimenting with Cayce salt practices and introduced them to her students. The results she recorded were remarkable. Students experienced far deeper meditative states, sharper intuition, and what many described as sudden initiations moments of awakening so profound they shifted their entire understanding of purpose and destiny. So how can you apply this in your own life starting today? Begin simply. Each morning, bless the salt you consume, whether sprinkled on food, dissolved into your drinking water, or placed in your bath. Offer a prayer that it serve your highest growth and divine alignment. This small act redefines salt from an everyday seasoning into a sacred key, connecting you to the consciousness of creation. You can also establish a weekly ritual. Dissolve sea salt or Himalayan salt in warm water. Step into the bath and set an intention for cleansing. Cayce taught that this simple practice washes away not only physical toxins, but also spiritual residue, opening you to divine guidance with clarity of mind and heart. And when you face life's great decisions, try the salt scrying technique. Dissolve blessed salt into spring water, focus on your question, and enter prayerful meditation. As the salt disappears, watch the images and impressions that surface within you. Time and again, Documented cases show this method unlocking answers, visions, and divine guidance that change lives forever. But here is something crucial to remember. Consistency is more important than perfection. Do not force yourself into elaborate rituals before you are ready. Start small. Bless your salt. Be mindful as you use it. And allow your practice to expand naturally as your soul feels called. Cayce always emphasized that true spiritual practice must grow from authenticity, not obligation. Keep a journal to record your experiences, patterns, and insights. Over time, you may begin to notice remarkable connections, moments of guidance, breakthroughs in prayer, or healing experiences that link directly to your salt practices. Many of Cayce's most extraordinary healing cases began with the simplest steps, only later blossoming into profound transformation. And remember, you are not alone on this journey. Communities of seekers around the world continue to explore these teachings, sharing results, encouragement, and evidence that Cayce's insights remain as relevant today as they were decades ago. These aren't shallow inventions or passing trends. They are echoes of wisdom carried through human history, now rediscovered for a generation ready to awaken. When you work with salt in this way, you connect yourself to a timeless lineage of souls who have used it as a tool for purification, healing, and divine service. Every tear, every drop of blood, every cell in your body carries salt. And within that salt is the memory of your soul's journey across countless lifetimes. By consciously engaging with it, you are not simply seasoning food, you are activating memory, aligning with divine order, and stepping into your true spiritual purpose. The documented readings leave no doubt. Growth accelerates when we use natural spiritual technologies like this one. Salt, simple and ordinary to the eye, becomes extraordinary when embraced with awareness. It bridges the gap between your human body and your eternal soul. If what you've heard today has opened your eyes to new possibilities, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss more revelations from Cayce's extraordinary legacy. Share this message with those you love, because somewhere, someone is waiting for the key that will ignite their spiritual awakening. The universe places simple gifts within reach, and salt is one of them. Your willingness to treat it as sacred reveals your readiness to step into higher consciousness and divine purpose. The question is, will you take the first step?